Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Call of Duty's back on the menu, but Sentiment Games make a rather significant update yesterday to the auto. 30 bullets now instead of 25. ARs are very happy about it. The SMG pros coming at their necks as you might well expect. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Videos to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. It was a beautiful lineman cards are coming here to say. First of all, just want to mention Fantasy, kind of last and final call to sign up for Major 3 qualifiers. This is basically the only chance you have to do it for the next 3 weeks up until the major. If you guys want to get involved, link down below. The team I chose yesterday was Cellium. I think I chose Afro and Harry, and then I had a little bit of money left over for Attach, which it might not be the best in the world, especially because the reason why I chose Harry and Afro was kind of because I thought their roles might work out a little bit better. But actually with Harry now potentially not being the main ER anymore, because Zero might go back to it, because there seemingly hasn't really been working out for their practice in the last couple of days. And also with this change to the auto, Zero might be back on their main ER. Not really sure my team is actually going to be all that special, but I'm sure you guys can most certainly do a better job. Firstly, just wanted to mention this from the subliners side because, I mean, well, of course, KiSMET past weekend, the Prime Classic, he comes in, does such a great job for their team. Statistically, it wasn't, like, spectacular or anything, but, like, just the pressure he was putting on the map, the communication, that it seemed to be so good every time we went into a listening with him. And I'm pretty sure this weekend they were what? I mean, they won 6 series, I think, this weekend. So I think they were, like, 18-3, 18-4 in map count this weekend, which, you know, was very impressive indeed. Looking solid in all the game modes, and as he tweeted out, I was rotating from P2 to P3, and it hit me, damn, I really teal with Crimsix from Anonymous. And of course, there's only really 2 players this could actually be, because it's not going to be Crim himself, and it's not going to be, you know, KiSMET, of course, because he tweets this out, so, you know, either Porlex or Hydra. You can imagine Porlex. Apparently that was the correct answer as well. But, yeah, they officially have extended his contract, right? So when they brought him on, they only brought him on as kind of like a 2-week contract. So there's the thing the CDL allows teams to do. They can bring players on for a 2-week contract, not sign them as like a full official player contract, just pay them for those 2 weeks. And I think they might be able to extend it a little bit, but then at some point, like, they can't just keep doing 2 weeks. I think they probably have to just say, okay, you know, a full official player. So we'll see what that means for Optic, actually, because they can do 2 weeks for now for pro loots, and then if Elite's not coming back, then they might have to do something else. We'll see. But subliners have confirmed that, as we might well expect, KiSMET is going to be signed now to a full player contract. They're very excited and very happy, understandably, with how things went to the past weekends at the Prime Classic. But yeah, it's certainly an uphill battle ahead of them. They're currently 11th in the league, 40 points. They're only like 30 points off of 6th place, because 6th place has 70 points. So theoretically, there could be an awful lot of movement there. We certainly would expect an awful lot of movement to happen at the bottom half of the league. But subliners are going to have to get their act together quickly in terms of these actual regular league play matches. And as we'll look at it in a few minutes, like their schedule this Major 3 qualifiers is not easy one bit. They have some matches that are made slightly easier, maybe by like optics changes and stuff like that. But yeah, still far from easy, and they have to put some significant points on the board soon if they want to get a chance to make it to the World Championship. But this team with KiSMET now on the team full time should certainly be capable of doing exactly that. This also from Mobile Breaking Point Lineman made this again, like hardpoint demon at the Prime, Crim with a 1.17 KD in the mode, an 8-1 record actually in that mode. You guys remember at the start of the year when well, they couldn't win a hardpoint to save their lives. They finally won a few. I think they won 6 in a row when they brought Porlex into the team initially. But those, I'm pretty sure those 6 wins were against the worst teams in the league. They beat Paris, they beat Minnesota, they beat one other team with 2-0 in the kind of hardpoints they played in those series. But now they're actually starting to win hardpoints against decent teams. It's certainly a good sign for the subliners in general. But let's dive into this then, right? So, well, as Chrome points out, the Automaton's default magazine size has now been increased from 25 up to 30. This was actually not mentioned, I believe, in the patch notes, but people notice, as of course you might well expect, that yeah, it's 30 instead of 25. This, I think, is maybe more significant than it seems on the surface, just because I was surprised personally when this game first came out that the auto was actually only 25 bullets in the first place. Usually, these faster firing ARs have, you know, 30 bullets, right? That's generally how it is. 25 seemed rather low for a weapon like this, and really means that unless you're shooting very straight, 2 kills is probably what you're going to get with it. The pros, of course, can do a bit better than that if they're shooting absolutely dead straight, but, you know, the 30 bullets instead of 25 does mean that you probably get another kill out of this gun, which is rather significant. So my first thought was, okay, like, are the pros going to GA it or something, right? Because I guess maybe they could have asked the developers for this, because it seems like Cellium have been somewhat responsive lately to some of the issues. We saw just yesterday or the day before that the, like, agents or whatever they're called, the characters that you can play as, some of them were silent, they then became not silent with the mantling and stuff, and now they've made everything silent. So that seems to be a response to what the competitive scene thought. So maybe they've been saying, okay, look, we kind of want 30 bullets in this. Now, still, does it actually make the autos too strong? Like, you know, could the STG come into the meta, right? Who knows if they decide to GA this? I doubt it's going to happen, but understandably, the SMG players might not be so happy about it, right? Because the auto is a pretty good gun, and we've seen on some maps, for example, like Gavutu and stuff, like, even teams have put out like 4 autos already this game, as opposed to needing any SMGs. And I think there has been a relatively good balance there, and now we might actually see it kind of shift in the AR's favor, which it might help some teams more than others, because I think the 25 to 30 is maybe maybe more significant than it seems on the surface. Don't know what you guys think about this, but I think it's certainly going to mean that the auto is much more viable. Not having to reload in that circumstance, like, well, it gives you a lot of advantage to chill a little bit further. And as Method says, 30 clip auto, obviously, he's happy about it being an AR player, but and as RC says, of course, he's now the flex, technically, for the Atlanta FaZe. He's using the AR, the auto, most of the time, and on some hills, probably using the MP40, but now maybe using the AR and the auto a little bit more often than maybe he was before, just because, yeah, the 30 bullets is something of a nice little advantage, a nice little cushion you can have in your back pocket as well. As attached as the auto now has 30 bullets, this is a great update and will improve the game drastically, so not sure if he really believes this or not, but of course he's now kind of the flex on that team as well, so he's using the auto more often than not as well, which he's probably not too mad about. Now Octane says this to Zero, of course, because we saw the other day the fact that when Harry has come into this team in place of Gizmo, Harry's probably more comfortable on a main assault rifle, and Zero thought, okay, maybe I'll just use the SMG, and Nasty can use the flex. Now maybe Zero's going to go back to the main, or he's going to go back to the flex, but either way he's probably going to be using the auto here, and as he says, you know, nice try, I went back yesterday, you are not safe again, that lasted 3 hours to Octane, so seemingly, and I think we even saw that Clayster's team took down, you know, the London guys with Zero on the SMG without too much difficulty, so it seems like they've gone back to what effectively how things were before, which it might be a bit better, and Zero, I guess he saw the 30 bullets in the auto and was like, yeah, I'm having a piece of that, so definitely tweeting your perspective, but of course the SMGs, and maybe understandably, whenever something like this happens, whenever an SMG gets buffed, whenever an AR gets buffed, the players that use the other weapon type are always kind of frustrated about it. As CleanX says, the god gun getting above ARs, stay blessed, we can't keep letting them get away with this, so it's kind of interesting to me. Like, I don't think the MP40 is quite as strong of an SMG as some SMGs have been in the past. Let's just say the MP5 with a 10mm barrel in Modern Warfare was absolutely absurd, and this year I think there's been a relatively good balance. Of course, I'd kind of like to see if another weapon could come in, the Volk, for example. Like, I mean, you know, in an ideal world, it could kind of be 2 MP40s, 1 Volk and 1 auto or whatever on certain maps, or maybe the STG or whatever could come into the meta. But as it is right now, the auto's got even stronger. Probably we're going to see more often 3 autos on some maps, on Gavutu especially, than we did before. Paul X is happy about it as well, 30 in the clip. Crim actually has a kind of interesting idea here, because if you get rid of all the bullets in your clip and then you reload, you have to kind of like cock the weapon back or whatever to get it ready to go again, to add a little bit extra time. So Crim reckons actually the way to do it is to use 29 bullets only, then that allows you to kind of faster reloads, max hitting this type of stuff. So please learn, Crimsix, as a veteran, he knows all about that type of stuff. Now Sasha says this, right, because he's talking here about COD Champs 2019, I believe, when the Sorg, the kind of the SMG in that game that was pretty much the only one used the entire year, was pretty bad most of the year, until the end they made it a hit scan. So for some reason in that title, the Sorg used to be a pellet firing weapon effectively. I think it was because Battle Royales were coming out and stuff, but the Sorg, you could fire the bullets and there was a travel time. They made the Sorg a hit scan, and that made it significantly better towards the end of the season. Now really all year, maybe there was 1 player out of the 5 on the team, because it was 5v5 at the time, was using a Sorg, and then towards the end of the year, all of a sudden 2 or even 3 on certain situations actually became viable, and then the ICO and the Maddox kind of you know, retreated to some degree. But most of the year it was pretty much just a Maddox fest, and then the occasional Sorg would come in for the sub players. So such is obviously seeing a lot of the SMG players kind of say, oh, the ARs are blessed, like, you know, these guys are just, they get their way all the time and stuff like this, and such is like, look, back in the day, a few years ago, before COD Champs, your SMG got buffed dramatically, and now you guys are complaining about 5 extra bullets, these guys gotta be trolling. And then aBeZy says, to be fair, the Maddox was the best gun all year, they had to make it fair. Somehow, I don't know about you, but I would take the better gun for the $2 million tournaments over 4 normal ones, so fair isn't the right word, literally game-changing for the most important times. So Sasha's still pretty mad, I guess, about the fact that they changed the Sorg back in the day, and of course it was aBeZy and Co that won, beating Sasha and his 100 Thieves team in the finals. And then, well, even as this from Sasha I thought was rather interesting, just because the pistol though is rather strong at the moment. Lots of people have said that actually the Rat might be one of the strongest weapons in the entire game, and Sasha's like, look, I have no clue why that's even allowed, the 3-shot pistol, not in my rule set, right? So Sasha, if he was if the Sasha World League was coming back and he was making the rules, he wouldn't allow that pistol to be used. And maybe now with the extra 5 bullets in the auto, that might be the thing that says, okay, let's get rid of the pistol, just because now they have some extra bullets to deal with in close ranges and don't need the pistol. So definitely some further implications that could come as a result of this. This also thought was kind of interesting, as Joe Deceive says, one of the kind of ranked play demons, let's just say, 30 bullets in the auto, and I'm praying for no bloom on my MP40, right? And as he goes on to further say, get F8 un-G8 on the 40, right? So, the F8 stabilizer, I think it's called, the one that shots are used by accident in one of those series, and RC says on it, sir. So maybe that's the way to make it. Balance out the autos a bit better, un-G8 the F8 stabilizer on the MP40, and then they can get a bit better as well. So we'll see how things go. Clayster's a happy man, but he doesn't want to give the developers too much credit. He says, we're all excited for the AR to have 30 bullets, or at least the ARs are excited. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but shouldn't stuff like this be default? We praise them for adding red dots back on the minimap, right? So we're saying this should have happened at the start of the game, and now it's happened several months in. But of course, look, which teams is it going to favour? Which teams teams isn't going to hurt. As Tom Rhinoga 2 says, any team with 3 main ARs is smiling right now. Of course, well, Florida fit that category very nicely. So out of all the teams, you can certainly look at Florida. I do wonder if Minnesota Rokkr even think I can in a second here. Like maybe we can do something or other with them, with MajorManiak sitting on the bench, and of course the Royal Ravens as well. Then again, is it really going to change the meta to the point where you've got 3 ARs a lot of the time? I'm not necessarily sure it is, but we'll see how it plays out here over the coming days. This also just to mention real quick, speaking of Minnesota Rokkr, because MajorManiak of course is on the bench, and actually I thought it was kind of incredible that, well, not necessarily incredible, particularly surprising, but just the way the season has gone so far, that Enable, when he was doing his power rankings, actually put Minnesota Rokkr down there in the D tier, the worst team in the league, which maybe well is justified. Seattle Surge down there in the C tier, just above the Paris Legion, and then the B tier is absolutely stacked, which I think is probably fair enough at this point. Like, subliners have maybe separated themselves to some degree from the rest of these guys, but I do quite like this in the sense that if you were to have a matchup between any of the teams in the B tier, like, it's rather tough to call who's going to win any of those games, like between any of these matchups right now, just especially because, well, the competition for one, but also the state of Vanguard, and with some additional changes we have just seen, maybe it makes it even harder to call how things are going to go. But yeah, I thought this power rankings list was pretty interesting. We'll see if it actually plays out in reality though over these coming weeks, because I'm sure there's still going to be many changes. Of course, the Optic guys, they are back in action later on today. Illy in the background here is not going to be playing in tonight's game. Prolute is going to be in their match instead, of course, with a Dashi rounding out the roster. Will that work out for them? Who knows? We'll see if kind of what has apparently been pretty good practice the last few days will transfer into their league games. But well, before we talk about the matches for today, just wanted to mention briefly here the matches that the subliners have, of course, because they just won the Pro-Am Classic, but they're currently 11th in the point standings, and they have a very hard run. They play FaZe. That's the game going on tonight. That is, if they win that one, that's a huge confidence boost. Like, I feel like if they beat FaZe tonight somehow or other, and I'm really looking forward to that series, then I think that they will probably qualify for champs. I think they'll just have the momentum from that. But if they lose, things get kind of sketchy. Boston is never going to be an easy game. Then they play Paris. Of course, they've been getting better. Toronto, they had a banger match with the subliners. Toronto could have made the finals there, but lost 3-1 at the end to the subliners at the Pro-Am Classic, and then their final game is against Optic. And at this time, we don't actually know if Prolute's going to be there in the team. Like, Illy could well be back in time for this matchup, right? So subliners have a really hard path, I think. Probably one of the hardest. But if they win the majority of these series, they should start putting themselves in a decent position to qualify for the World Championships. But well, yeah, that FaZe versus subliners game is one of the 3 games going on tonight, but these are the other ones. Thieves, Royal Ravens, like, all of these games are bangers, I think. The first game I really like because I always enjoy the matches between these two teams. Last time they played, I think Ravens stomped them when Ravens actually had, I think they had Paul X in their team, right? And they 3-0'd Los Angeles Thieves, even with the sub. Now that Ravens have a sub again, this time it's Harry in place of Gizmo. Like, I still think Thieves should be slightly favoured. They look good this past weekend. I think they'll find a way to win this series 3-1. Optic Texas, they'll of course play Los Angeles Guerrillas. This is really hard to call. I think that Optic probably still will win this though, just because LAG looks pretty bad, honestly, at the Pro-Am Classic. And, maybe they'll change things around. In fairness, it has been their search and destroy for both of these teams. It's been their strength as of late, which is why I think that in the respawns, Optic might actually have a good chance to do something here, which is, again, I might give it 3-1. I don't know if I'm going to say 3-1s all across the board again. I feel like the last series, I feel like it's a game 5 on the cards. I don't know. Subliners versus FaZe, game 5. And I think it's going to be a test of both of these teams' resilience, right? Because the subliners, like, they clutched up in a lot of search and destroys at the Pro-Am Classic, a lot of game 2, round 11 kind of search and destroys that they won because they never had to go to a game 5. We haven't seen what this team is like in a game 5. Can they cope with the pressure of playing a team like FaZe in game 5? But also, can FaZe cope with that pressure? Because their search and destroy lately has also been pretty bad. So I'm going to continue my bold runner predictions. If you guys remember, I think it was going into the Sunday, on the Championship Sunday, the Pro-Am Classic, I took New York to win. So I'm going to continue the bold prediction on the subliners front and say that they win a respawn here and they take both search and destroys against FaZe to win this series 3-2. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on the like button. Tell us your YouTube gods, it's a good video. Others like you should see it as well. And help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.